Welcome to the Globetrottin ADs. This podcast is for you, athletic directors, activity coordinators, coaches, and program associates based in international schools around the world. The Globetrottin ADs is proudly hosted by Nick DeForest from the American International School Vienna and Matt Fleming from the American International School of Budapest. Here they are now, Nick and Matt and the Globetrottin ADs.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Globetrottin ADs. We're really happy this week to have an old school colleague, one of our good friends from going way back, Joe Ito. Joe is currently the athletic director at the Bush School, which is in Seattle, Washington. Joe is also a former international school teacher and AD, having worked in schools in Germany, as well as in Hawaii, which really isn't international, but it's a little exotic, a little out there, a little different. So we're happy to hear about some experiences he's gone through there, and happy to have Joe back in and reconnect. So welcome, Joe, and I'll throw it over to Nick.
All right, thanks, Matt, and Joe, thanks for being here. It's a shame we didn't get to see you in person at the conference this year, but next year, getting closer to Seattle and Denver. Fingers crossed for that one. Why don't you kick us off and just give us a bit more of a background of how you got where you are, and go for it.
Thanks for having me, first of all. You guys, as you've probably heard from other colleagues, are doing a great job with your podcast. I remember last year at the conference, I think that was the very beginning of it, right? You had your little recorder with you thinking about getting this started. So I'm really happy to see what you're able to make out of it, and excited to be part of it today. Let's start with my first stop, right, was at the international school in Germany, in Düsseldorf. I was a basketball official at the time, and I in the local German sort of basketball club scene, and was invited. I just got a call to call some games at the international school in Düsseldorf, and I spoke English from home. My mom's from England, my dad's from Japan, so I had sort of the ability to communicate well with the kids and the coaches and the athletic director there at the time, and got a couple of games in a row, sort of, over several months, whatever. And then after a while, they just asked me if I was interested in coaching, and they had a club that was connected to the school that participated in the local German basketball scene, plus also they are a NIAAA member, or were at the time, I'm assuming it's still the same. So they invited me for an interview to potentially coach, and that was with the club side of things, so coaching a ISD, so a Düsseldorf team that would compete in the local club scene. And it went really well, so they offered me the job sort of on the spot, and I was happy and excited. And on my way out, they had two offices. So one, the guy who oversaw the club scene was on one side of the gym, and the guy who oversaw the international side of things was on the other side. So I left the one side, and then the guy who ran the international things, he called me over, say, hey, come over here, are you interested in coaching for the NIAAA side as well? So I basically left with two coaching gigs in one day. That's how I got involved with the school. And I was there for 5 years as a coach before I became the AD. So I was coaching different levels, also different sports. I started with basketball, but also coached track, softball, which is funny because I have no idea how to play softball, but they needed someone to step in. And they had a structure where in the club part of the program, they had a department head for different sports, one for soccer, one for volleyball, one for basketball. So after a few years, I became the department head in basketball. And then eventually the AD at the time moved on, and the job was open. So I applied, was still in school. I attended the sports university in Cologne. And I was pursuing a degree in training and performance, so to be a high-level coach, but really didn't know where that was going to take me, because if you want to become a Bundesliga coach, let's say, to coach in the professional basketball league, you need connections, right? You either need to be a former player or have some kind of connections. I didn't really have those, so I couldn't see how I was going to make a living out of being a coach one day, right? So I applied while I was finishing up my degree, and was lucky to land the job in 2008, I think it was. 2003, sorry. 2003, 17 years ago. Can you believe it? Anyway, so I was a young, up-and-coming sort of coach, really, who landed in the AD position. So I started in Düsseldorf, stayed there for 5 years, met my wife, who's from Seattle, playing faculty basketball in our Wednesday night, adult basketball option there. We met playing there. It's a little bit complicated. She left to move to Hawaii, to the Big Island at the time, but I was still finishing up my degree and was still the AD in Düsseldorf. She stayed there for a year, came back to work at The Hague, at ASH, right, the American School in The Hague. So we did the super long distance thing, and still a little bit of a long distance, but much closer, so we were able to see each other regularly. So then I guess in the 5th year, when I was the AD there, we decided that we were going to get married and wanted to move somewhere, right? We wanted to test the waters and do something different, right? And she, through her stint on the Big Island, had a connection in Hawaii, landed a job at Iolani School on Oahu. And I just finished up my degree, packed up my stuff, and said, I'm just going to go follow you, right? So I was pretty much gave up everything and moved to Hawaii, to Honolulu. Was with her for the first 6 months, and I was picked up basketball officiating again. That was a great way to connect in the sports community. And did different odd jobs, right? I worked as a swim instructor. I'm a terrible swimmer. It's kind of ironic, but worked as a swim instructor and again, picked up different odd jobs while trying to land a job as an AD, right? And then 6 months went by. So I moved out there in January. Summer started. We were committed to going back to Germany to see my family. But I didn't have a job. So I started to get a little bit uneasy, right? Not having sort of a firm full-time option. And then just before we left, I interviewed for the athletic director position at Mid-Pacific Institute. Must have had a great interview. I think, were a little bit desperate by their AD or former AD leaving sort of on short notice to pursue a job at a local college as an athletic director. Anyway, so I landed the job. Is the long story short, right? So I became AD at Mid-Pacific Institute. My first question was, can I still go to Germany for 3 weeks and then come back? And they approved, so that was great. And that was a big step in my career, right? Sort of going from the international school world to like the US-based school program, much bigger, much more intense. And it was a great setup where I was able to bring some structure that I think the program lacked at the time. And at the same time, it taught me so much, right? And in the 5 years that I was there, every end of the job, hiring, facility, scheduling, all of that stuff. So anyway, stayed for 5 years. My daughter was born in Hawaii in that 4th year, I think. And the job was it was super fun, but also super demanding, right? Like 5-6 days a week, full on. We had 7 varsity sports a season out there. And you can imagine every day of the week, there was an opportunity to go out and watch whatever it was, right? From more traditional sports to sailing, bowling, wrestling. I mean, we had everything, right? Canoe paddling was a local sport that was super popular. But we also had football, basketball, all that stuff, right? So I was just mega busy. And after my daughter was born, I said, I'll do it 1 more year. But after that, I need to find a better work-life balance, right? Yeah. And we started looking. And then I interviewed for the athletic director position in Frankfurt at FIS. They hired Will Moncrief, who you know really well, right? Yeah. And offered me the activities director and assistant AD position. And sounded great at first because I thought it was a better work-life balance, right? Mm-hmm. But it was a combination thing. So the job was not a perfect fit for me in the sense of being basically as busy as before, not finding a great balance there. And then in addition to that, there was a health issue with my wife's family, with her one of her parents, that led us to have to break our contract after a year and saying, hey, we got to try to move back to Seattle so she could be closer to her family. And timing-wise, it just happened to work out where there was an opening at Bush, here at the Bush School. Cool. I applied, and I think well, I had a sort of an interesting background for them to pursue someone who was currently overseas. But my experience in Hawaii, I think, gave me, not only on paper, but really through the interviews, it just equipped me to be in a position to be a strong candidate. And out of, I don't know, 60 plus people who applied at the time, they ended up picking me, right? And it's a good fit here for me. Work-life balance-wise, I found what I was looking for at the time, and still enjoy that piece. And it's a small program, right? We have few facilities of our own, so there's some challenges there, but we have a lot of potential, right? And I saw that right from the day I accepted the job to where we've grown it now, right? 6 years later, in my 7th year now, but we still are sort of moving up the ladder when it comes to thinking of our competitiveness, structures in the program, and so on and so forth. So that was a super long intro.
The longest intro ever, Joe. No, but it was good. It got to why we, wanted to have you on, and, we talked about having you on for a while, but yeah.
Great. I was going to say, I think you're the first person we've had who's transitioned back to the States after being abroad.
And not coming from the States too, right? I think that might be a common one where you come from the States, go abroad and come back. For me, it was sort of a big step to move to Hawaii. And
exactly. And that's why, because we've always come across folks who said, eventually I'm going to go back, or they know at some point they're going to transition either back home to the States or maybe Canada or somewhere else in North America. So back to somewhere else besides the international life. So I guess, you're the one first one we've talked to who's kind of done that. So I guess what was the move like coming from the international school system? Well, not really system, but setting, that lifestyle, coming back to moving to the States and then falling into that line of work.
Right. I think it might be different depending on which program you're already in, right? Let's say in the international school world. One thing about Mid-Pacific in Hawaii was they had the IB program, which is kind of rare, I think, in the U.S. or not as common as you might think. So them seeing sort of that Düsseldorf was an IB school as well, I think I had a little bit of a connection there. They were also had an international program by having kids from abroad sort of that they took in that attended the school. So I think that was a little bit of a piece that was unique to that school that ended up helping me with my application, right? But two things that strike me that are really different when it comes to sort of high school sports at the international school and maybe in the US in general, right? One is culture, how sports is really embedded in the school system, probably even more so, at least that compared to what I had seen, right? And intensity, right? Frequency of practices, level of intensity when it comes to, if you see again, this is only from my experience, but there are international school programs that are much bigger than what I had seen in my career that have, great facilities and probably have a more intense program than I had experienced in this. But again, from what I had seen, witnessing what a student was able to, or just witnessing their journey from Mid-Pacific to pre-K through 12. So seeing a kid from middle school through, let's say, their senior year and their development and the ability of the coaches to really get the most out of them. It was just struck by it, right? Because there was just some cases where kids developed to a point that they never would have had that experience in Düsseldorf or maybe some other international schools we competed against at the time. I was there, right? So the intensity, and that brings positives and negatives, I'd say, right? It's really finding that balance in a system like that. Positives, again, seeing kids thrive, sign their D1 letter of intent, following them in college, and then some even now in the pro leagues, right? Being able to see that is just incredible, right? Working with coaches, helping them with their professional development and creating their team cultures that are positive, engaging, and intense, right? On the other hand, you have a lot of pressure, right? From parents, from coaches, from alums who, at Mid-Pacific, there was some of that, and I certainly saw it. But we also had schools in our league. Those of you who might know a little bit about Hawaii, Punahou School, Iolani, Kamehameha, St. Louis for football, where it's just, in my opinion, there's parts of it are really not healthy, right? When it comes to how involved the alumni might be with telling you as the AD who to hire, more or less, right?
Wow.
And I had some of that where they would come to me and say, hey, what do you think about this candidate? You should really pursue them, but not in the sense of you had to end up doing it that way, like they wanted to. But there are schools where the pressure is so high where they basically have the administration in their back pocket and dictate who needs to be hired, more or less, right? Or fired in some cases. So that is obviously the downside that I saw some of, right? And in the way it was a shock, right? So imagine me being 25 at the time, or I think 25 or so, and having a parent slamming on my door about the kids' playing time, and you just don't see that, or I never saw that in Düsseldorf. Right. Maybe some questions, and but never to that level where literally someone's trying to kick down your door, basically. Yeah. And those are the extremes. They don't happen every day, but I certainly saw some of that, and that was part of the reason why after 4 years, daughter was born, I just had to kind of remove myself a little bit from that side of it, which weighed down on me a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I try to explain sometimes the difference between what we do internationally and what happens in your typical stateside school program, one of the ideas I use is the concept of the FIT principle, which we learn as in PE, for example. You're learning how to train in fitness or any kind of physical fitness type of, whether it's endurance or muscular training. The FIT principle is F.I.T, so frequency, intensity, and training. And if you try to take that idea and you have over here the international schools, and on the opposite side you have what we typically have, we know about what's happening in the States, in North America, it's just completely different.
And I'll just give you an example there, right? So when you think of your season in the international schools being 3 months long, right? Roughly speaking. Mm-hmm. Over there, at least in Hawaii, right? And here too at Bush to some extent, but not quite the same level of extreme, right? I'll take baseball at the Pacific Institute. That's their number one sport. They won multiple state championships and so on and so forth. So the kids will start with the regular season in spring, start in February, and in May, like to go to playoffs and do really well. The day after the state tournament is over is when the off season begins. And the expectation of the coaches there is that the kids are there, all of them, right? Starting the day after the season's over. Wow. Then they play summer league, then they have fall conditioning, then they have, it just extends to the winter league that they play, and then you have the regular season again, right? Wow. 6 days a week of practices, right? At least 2 hours long, but then the kids show up early to help manage the field and leave late because they're, cleaning up and whatnot. So it's a huge commitment. And again, it's the balance, right? For those kids who can manage and thrive, it's perfect, right? They have an amazing experience, are able to likely play at the collegiate level, maybe even higher, right? But those kids who are sort of on the fringe and want to do it, and there's a little bit of peer pressure from the coaches and parents, you kind of watch both ends of it, right? And finding that middle balance can be challenging in a program like that.
But there's that F right there that you spoke of, Matt, the frequency. No off season, right? Just right back at it.
It just goes and goes, it seems like.
And that's not every program, right? That was baseball for them. Yeah. Basketball was similar maybe, but it's depending on each school.
Well, I think maybe hopefully part of this whole COVID crisis, right? I think everybody's been forced to kind of take a step back and look at everything and in terms of how people do their lives or what's happening in their lives. And, I think maybe one positive come out of this is kind of maybe step back and say the frequency of what we're doing with kids, maybe it's not as important to spend that much time on those things which adults might think or coaches might think is important.
Right.
It definitely gives you a different perspective, right?
And just kind of maybe should rethink this a little bit so the kids can have an opportunity to either get other things done or not put so much pressure on them to make these teams and be a part of these programs.
Yep. And on the flip side, it might lead to some kids sort of embracing everything and anything we can offer again in the future. Whereas, in the past, maybe, I'll skip practice today or whatever. Maybe that'll change, right? For some, they really want to connect and want to make it that commitment, right?
Yeah, I mean, our participation in the fall was higher than it's ever been when we did start. even though we knew we were going to have no international travel,
Right.
low possibility of having any games, and the kids still came out in drones. Joe, I just want to
we had great numbers. We had great numbers and high enthusiasm.
Joe, you talked about culture and intensity. Two of those things I definitely don't need that American influence in ours. I'm happy we don't have the intensity and that kind of, let's say, negative or culture. But you talked about development of kids, and that's something that I miss, or I wish we had more in international schools. Is you can you're not sure you're going to have a kid for 4 years or maybe 7 years, middle to high. You have to go year by year. You have to be satisfied with what you have. You don't know who's going to move in, who's going to move out. And I just wish that, I as a coach, but a lot of our other coaches, they could really dig in and help those players and see their progression from year to year, right? That's got to be satisfying for.
Oh yeah. And that's definitely different where, once you have a kid here at our school and middle school, they're likely to stay for high school. And certainly when they come in ninth grade, then they're going to be there for 4 years. So you do think of that journey maybe a little bit differently, right? You can plan for 4 years and really map out a journey for that kid starting in that moment, right? Especially if you see sort of some athletic talent there and some, what's the word? Can't think of it right now. Potential, right?
Oh, yeah.
For them to, right? Potentially be that kid that signs that letter of intent or commits to, at our school, it's, we have some that play at the D1 level after graduating from here, but many at the D2 level or stay engaged. That's one of our goals, just to want to remain physically active throughout life, really, right? After playing sports for us. And they might play club sports at the university level or intramurals. And that is a success as well, right?
Yeah.
So having those 4 years or potentially 7 years to help shape them in that way, you're right. I think that's a much bigger opportunity here, maybe, right?
We have to apply the concept of capturing lightning in a bottle. That's what I like to say in international schools, because it could happen like 1 year for whatever reason. If you're a coach, it's happened to me. Like you just get a great group of kids, and for whatever reason they're all. Most of the team is pretty talented. They get on pretty good, and they work well together, and you get lucky as well. You go to these international school tournaments, and you kind of have to ride it out. But there's also I've seen it before where there's some coaches in international schools who are just, for whatever reason, they're successful year in and year out, and they always have a good team, a good program going. So
I think the sports program at the international school is just such a vital piece. I mean, like over here too, but maybe in a different way, by allowing kids to connect, especially those that move to a new school, have a connection point. If they come out for fall sport right away, it allows them to integrate into the community much faster, right? That's actually what I wrote my thesis on when I graduated from the university in Cologne, which was around the connections that you are able to make in international schools specifically, right? Through sports, and I did sort of in-depth interviews and was able to prove sort of that. Yes, it was helpful. I mean, it's pretty obvious that was going to be the outcome.
Yeah.
I collected some data and did the interviews there. Definitely plays a vital role there, I think. Right?
Well, as we just mentioned, we get who we get. Whoever shows up through the door, and you could get an amazing basketball player move in at Christmas and change your season. But I want to know what, at least in your area, in Seattle or maybe in Hawaii, is there a lot of transferring or kids coming to a certain school because of a sport?
So in Washington State, we have classifications, right? And they go from 1B to 4A. So it's 1B, 2B, 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A. We're a 1A school. We're actually 2B school, and we opt up to play at the 1A level. So we're a pretty small independent school that is really known mostly for its experiential program, its academic program. And athletics is part of it, but not sort of the main reason why a kid would likely enroll here, right? Yeah. So within our league, it varies. We're kind of in the middle of the pack, I would say. The top schools, sort of competitively speaking, you might hear of a kid transferring from one of our schools to another, and it's never explicitly said because of athletics, but sort of behind the scenes, be like, okay, they might be looking for a bigger experience or whatnot. But then especially they might leave to pursue playing at the 2, 3, or 4A level, right? So move out of our league to play at a higher level. But at those higher levels, yes, absolutely. That's sort of the unhealthy piece, right? Athletic recruiting, while it's rarely ever sort of proven in a way, right, where there's actual sanctions against a coach or program. Sometimes it is, but very rarely. But there are many rules that sort of prevent that idea, which is at our level, it's kind of it's a downside because we're held to the same standard. And the kid that transfers from one school to another within the league, or even coming from outside the league into ours, they're held to the same standard as a kid that might transfer from one 4A school to another because they play basketball in the championship program. So it could be a detriment to those kids that transfer, because for us, we don't play that game. And we couldn't, because no one would come here because I show our program saying, oh yeah, I want to play for Bush and whatnot. Not that our athletic experience isn't important and that we don't have success. We do in our own way, but not at the same level like you might see. I mean, you might know Washington State is well known for different sports. Basketball, especially, right, is a huge deal, especially in the Seattle area. In fact,
sure.
A number of NBA pros come out of the high schools here. So yeah, we are bound by those rules. They don't necessarily apply to our league specifically, but yes, they exist, and they go from the most, I'll just use the word punitive, would be you have to sit out a year, right?
Okay.
Which you only have 4. That's a lot of time.
Oh yeah.
Right.
So that's interesting to hear, because that's definitely not what you would find in an international school type setting, right?
Yeah.
It's like you don't have to worry about transfer rules or eligibility is like school to school, and it depends case by case in terms of like how we do it at our school. So that's just another example of the differences of international school. I think international school and stateside school. So that's cool to hear from your side, going from the international back to the States. Coach Evaluator is the premier coach evaluation software for schools and athletic organizations, and preferred coach evaluation solution of the NIAAA and the Positive Coaching Alliance. The system is completely customizable with an always growing evaluation template library for athletic directors to reference. There are not only evaluations for ADs to use, but also self-evaluations and parent-player evaluations of coaches. Learn more about digitizing and simplifying your coach evaluation process by visiting www.coachevaluator.com. Mention Globetrottin ADs to receive a $200 discount on the yearly rate.
Kukri are a global multi-sport clothing brand specializing in providing the world's most prestigious schools with bespoke made and designed team uniforms for students of all standards and abilities. If you are frustrated by inconsistent colors, branding, costs, and sizing across your school's uniforms, then it's time to discuss an offering where every sport is available, from softball to soccer, for male and female athletes at rates to suit your budget. To find out how Kukri could elevate the apparel of your student athletes to a professional level, email the team at contact@kukrisports.com. A dedicated sales manager will offer you a quote today. Mention this ad and receive a special offer on your coach or PE staff order. Well, I wanted to bring up and talk about a little bit the origins of these international NIAAA classes, because everyone that listens knows we teach class for the NIAAA and go to the conference, and Matt, you were one of the founding fathers of the international. But going back to 2014 and at Vienna CEESA Conference.
Are you dating me?
Yeah. Well, it's not that long ago, 2014. I mean, it feels like a world away right now, but so let's start, because Joe was there. Joe was the first class, part of the first instructor course creators, right?
IIAA.
IIAAA.
Yeah, they're with us.
Let's go. I'm interviewing both of you now about the IIAAA.
Joe saved our skin. Joe was great, because we had a pretty good idea what we're going to do, and we were really just kind of, I don't want to say winging it, but it was really because Jim and Chris and I had put this idea together, and Joe, we kind of, if I remember right, Joe, I think we kind of got you a little late.
I'm trying to remember, Matt. Did we connect at the NIAAA conference the year before?
I think so. Yeah, because we
and
had.
the idea was born sort of because I came back to Frankfurt to bring the idea of professional development for athletic administrators, right, to the international school world, at least in
Anaheim.
Say again.
I think in Anaheim, maybe is that where we met up?
Might have been. Yeah. I think I remember a dinner we shared at some place there. Anyway, so my sort of experience with the NIAAA started in Hawaii. I had the chance to attend, I think my second year on the job. I had a mentor who was heavily involved in sort of the Hawaii leadership, but then also at the national level. And he said, "Hey, you need to go to that conference." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll check it out." And I never looked back.
Sorry, what was his name, Joe?
Don Botello. And he, he likely wasn't part this year, and maybe, anyway, he's retired basically now, right? But anyways, he was one of my mentors who I, to this day, look up to, not only for giving me that nudge, but also being sort of super well established in the world out there in Hawaii, in the local sports scene, highly respected. But anyway, it gave me sort of the first opportunity to participate in any type of professional development that was meaningful to me, especially being fairly new in the job in Hawaii, in the US. And I never looked back. I went to every single conference since then. So I was in, I think I went for 10 or 11 years straight. And then this year came around, right? But anyway, that's where we met, Matt. And then I moved to Frankfurt. And I think you guys had already thought about the idea of bringing a version of the NIAAA classes to the European ADs. And I was super excited because I thought, back when I started in Düsseldorf, my first year, there were no professional development. There was none. There was the only thing you had were your AD peers in your league, and luckily I had some strong mentors there who've been in the job for a long time who taught me the ropes. But aside from that, there was no formal certification, workshop, and all this stuff that's out there these days. Right. Your podcast is a great example, right? Sort of all the tools that up and coming ADs have available to them, right? Just didn't exist. So when I heard, hey, I can be part of giving back and jumping into the CEESA conference that I had heard little about before, I was super excited and was, of course, ready to jump in. And
it was really exciting because we were just kind of like diving into the deep end. Let's see what happens here.
Yeah,
and it was great. You were all in, and I think it just gave us all confidence. Like, yeah, we can do this. And in the end, after we did that workshop or that first course, even though it wasn't officially sanctioned by the NIAAA or anybody yet, we were trying to make our own NIAAA.
Wait a minute, because I'm looking right now. I know I have it somewhere, but I got a certificate from you. You know, like you just started to say it, but that was the beginning. You were trying to make your own, separate yet affiliated organization like the Canadian.
Sure. Right.
CEEAA. So it was the IIAAA. So I got to find it. I got to find my certificate. But I was in your class.
I probably have you in a floor somewhere, I'm sure. But yeah, we had a good turnout. The response was great, and it was different. It was a little nerve-wracking for me because I wasn't used to presenting in front of a group of peers like that.
Right, and it was interesting because I had sort of the perspective from the NIAAA. Maybe that was part of what I was able to bring, sort of wearing my fancy sports jacket and making it a little more formal, right? But having attended the classes, especially at the national conference, I kind of knew how much they had given me, and they were really sort of well-structured and well-planned out. And they'd already done it for so many years, right? So
we're trying to copy them, right?
Right, I remember the night before we went out for a good dinner and probably some adult beverages, and then I came back to the hotel room and I opened up my laptop and we were not ready yet, right? So I went in and polished the presentation one more time and stayed up until I can't remember until when, probably 1 or 2 a.m. And then we presented at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I remember feeling super tired that morning, but at least we had sort of a presentation that landed well, I think, right? We got some positive feedback.
Yeah, it gave us some confidence and some little traction going forward.
Well, CEESA has always been great, like supporting our PD, and we had some courses before that Vienna one, but the Vienna one was the first one, obviously with this course, but also was the first one where we kind of sold it or tried to sell it outside the CEESA ADs.
Yeah.
And, we thought it's in Vienna. That's an easy place to get to from around Europe. And, I wasn't involved in writing the course, but I was involved in the organization of the conference, right? Really the main one for our school. And so I just opened up the roster. And I know people always mention it. Every once in a while, someone will be like, yeah, I was there in Vienna, or I was there in Vienna. But I haven't looked at this registration probably since 2014. And there was 2 courses. So the 501I, right, which you two and Matt and Jim and Chris taught. And then there was 602C from the Canadian IIAA. Right. And that was called Crafting Your Handbook. And that was like 8 to 12 was your class. Then there was an hour break, and then there was 1 to 5. And that was it. That was the only things offered. No other speakers or anything. I mean, the teacher things were. Obviously, there was stuff for but no AD stuff. And there were 56 people signed up. And that wasn't just around Europe. There was, someone from a school in Hanoi, Senegal, some China, Cairo, Amman, Beirut.
Bishop came to that.
Moscow, like all over, 56 different people from schools all over. I couldn't believe it. Just that someone came, Joe, you touched on it. Obviously, like someone flew from China to get 2 courses, one intro to international schools, and then making your handbook. I think that's amazing. It just shows how far PD has come.
Right. And I don't know how at the time, and then after moving back here, I lost touch with how the next steps happened, right? How aware the NIAAA was of the demand that's out there. But obviously it showed like over the next few years then that they realized, hey, there's a real potential there to tap into a market that, to provide, again, their message and their philosophy in a more formal structure where they can provide like the certificate that might get you something one day, or at least counts for something that's vetted by a accreditation team or whatever. And look to where it's come today. I mean, it's amazing. And having been part of sort of the grassroots effort at the time and initiating it makes me feel really great. Right? And I'd love to reconnect sort of with the international side of it, whether it's teaching a class at the conference or whatever. But right now I'm so settled here in my Seattle world where I could definitely imagine returning to the international school world one day. I've always said I'd love to show my daughter sort of that side of, like a side of a different country, different culture, and different type of academic experience as well. But I haven't sort of taken any official NIAAA 900 classes, right? Where I potentially go at the CEESA.
Get on it.
A couple of our webinars now, so you can take them at your leisure.
I've taken so many of the NIAAA classes. This is something I can latch onto.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something new. And we had, just at the conference, we had over 40 in each of the 900s. And that was, mixed, obviously people from all around the world, but also at least a quarter stateside people, that have taken almost everything, wanted something different, want to see what it was like.
I think comparatively, too, our number in terms of like the average number of attendees per course, I'm not exactly sure what the number is yet, but in talking with some of the NIAAA folks afterwards, I think the international courses were above average in terms of number of attendees. So that was good to hear, because that means we're getting, there's interest there for sure, and people want to move forward with this certification level. So that was great to hear. Yeah. Of course, the most higher attendees are their 500s, because those are all for the beginners usually, or the first, second, third year AD who's looking for that PD and they really need it.
Yeah, right. And I've never been to PD opportunities in Asia, but I know they exist for athletic administrators as well. But I can only assume that the NIAAA is just so much bigger, right? And are now becoming more of a global player, and they just have the structure and the means to provide a really super solid experience, right? Yes, it's travel involved and might be more difficult for people from different parts of the world to attend, but I can only encourage it, right, as much as possible to pursue the possibility of, again, when it's in person, especially attending a conference. It's been a huge part of my job. I look forward to it every year, to reconnecting with you guys, other people that, from Hawaii that I've gotten to know over the years. again, it's part of my routine every year, and I always look forward to it starting in November. Hey, it's only 4 weeks away, and you get a little break. It's great, right? To get away from things for a few days. But the level of classes that you see there is just so much higher because they can handpick the best possible presenters. Whereas if you take an online course or throughout the year, there's nothing wrong with those, right? But they are probably not delivered in the same quality, let's say, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Definitely different when it's a national faculty, right? Teaching the class. And
global now, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
you got it.
It's just growing.
Yeah, it's been great to see.
You might be, you mentioned it, but once you do take the courses, you might be a great teacher of them because obviously you have the experience, but now you're in the States. So if there's any, because you can offer 900 courses in the US at normal conferences, people might want them. So
yeah. I have been involved locally here, teaching 501 and 502. And I did a couple of workshops over the years at the NIAAA level. But yeah, certainly it would be an opportunity to reconnect or to connect with new people that I don't know the international school world. It's certainly a good possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we want to wrap it up a bit, but you're in Seattle and you have a background. Obviously, no one can see this, but you have a Bundesliga background right now behind you from your German days. So I want to ask you a little bit about sports, about your love for soccer briefly, but also I want to know what the NHL vibe is in Seattle with the Kraken coming up.
A tough one for me. You might know more than I do.
Oh, come on, Joe. Come on. Oh. Well, what's this?
Talk about the Bundesliga all day. That's sort of it's so interesting, right? When people, when I go to my first AD meeting here at in Seattle, or I remember in Hawaii too, they were trying to ask me questions, and I just have no idea about NFL, all the football stuff. I just didn't grow up with it, right?
Yeah.
So I have to kind of pull information from somewhere to be able to participate in conversations of that nature. NHL similar, right? So I do sort of follow my Bundesliga team, Borussia Mönchengladbach, as much as possible. I wake up on the weekends at 6:30 our time to catch their 3:30 p.m. game in Germany. This year has been exciting to watch their Champions League run. So, the Kraken, I like their logo. I can tell you that. I know where their practice facility is, but I haven't actually made one connection now with a person who's involved in their leadership through this new coalition that we joined here with our school. We're a member of the Play Equity Coalition in our county, which is trying to give youth from underserved communities access to sports.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I met a person from their leadership there. But again, when it comes to any details sports related there, I'm sorry, I'm not the right person to ask.
One more than sports question, because you mentioned the soccer. The Sounders.
Don't worry, I had no idea the Kraken were even coming. Sorry, full disclosure.
Oh my God! Did you know that the Indians aren't going to be the Indians anymore?
I knew that.
Okay.
I knew that.
All right.
I knew the Browns lost the other night.
Yes.
So I'm kind of up to date.
Okay. Well, Joe, about the soccer though, because Seattle's got or at least in North America, I mean, they just lost in the MLS Cup final, right? And it seems like a pretty big following there. So, can you get into the MLS?
So I've been to multiple games.
Yeah.
It is so different. I mean, for those who don't know, I grew up in Germany, right? So I from age 5 I was there and followed my Bundesliga club from age 8, 9, 10, whatever, and went to their games. So the culture is just so different. I think of the MLS being a great sort of family outing where you can sit there and eat your popcorn or whatever and follow the game. The level of play is still much lower, I think, right? Than you'll see in the European leagues. Although it's improved, it is a team, the Sounders, that has a really loyal fan following. So they do have sort of a fan section where they're singing throughout the game. They're able to get the whole stadium going. So it is fun. I'm not saying it's not fun. It's just different. And I would always prefer to go to a Bundesliga game in comparison, but I obviously don't have that available here. So I love watching them. They've been really successful. This MLS Cup game was painful for the local soccer fans. But they'll be back. They have a strong sort of franchise. Right?
Cool. Very cool.
Awesome. Joe, it's been great having you on the show, and it's great to catch up. And get that perspective from you, from an international person who's gone back to the States and been around a little bit. And, it's great. You're a multi-tool player and a great resource for us. So me personally, I'm looking forward to you getting back in the international game at some point, and hopefully back these ways. We'd love to work with you again. But, whatever happens. We just wish you and your family all the best as we head into the holiday season. So thanks again for joining us.
Thanks so much. I enjoyed this a lot. I'm just impressed by, again, from where you took it from last year, basically literally a year ago, right?
Yeah.
The handheld recording device to where you are now. I mean, a regular podcast that has great topics. Seems like every couple of weeks or whatever. But also the virtual stuff you put together, the 2 conferences. I know you're working on a student leadership one that I hope to connect with you about to see if kids from our school might be able to join in some way. But I just tip my hat because I know it doesn't happen overnight. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into it. And again, you're making the job better and easier for a lot of us, right? And especially the young and up and coming ADs. So I tip my hat. You guys are doing a great job.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Great way to end, buddy. See you in Denver.
Until next week, this has been another episode of the Globetrottin ADs.